Hello, Screamer, and welcome to Scream Stream, your spoiler-free guide to streaming horror entertainment. I'm your host, Jimbo Lewis. If you're new to the show, what I do is pick a horror movie from one of the various streaming services and give it a spoiler-free review. Scream Stream is streamed live on Twitch, Saturdays starting at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just head over to twitch.tv/Jimbo Lewis. And if you'd like to pick up some Scream Stream merch, just head over to redbubble.com/people/Jimbo Lewis, and you would be helping out the podcast, and I would greatly appreciate it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 50 of the podcast. Now, if you don't know, I had to actually cancel the podcast part of the show, so we are no longer in iTunes or Spotify or anything like that. So as I mentioned, I had to cancel the actual podcast portion of the show. We just had to save money on stuff, and hosting a website is about $17 a month, and it's just something I had to do. So there you go. If you would like to support the show monetarily, you can't. You don't. I'm not asking, but you can if you want. There's a donation button in the or on the Twitch page. Just scroll down, you'll see a donation button there, or you can subscribe to the Twitch channel for $4.99 a month. That would help out the show as well, and maybe one of these days I can actually get back onto iTunes and stuff. I do know that the company I used was Libsyn, which is one of the best podcast hosting companies out there. So if I wanted to ever restart the show, I can just request that my old show slug, I get access back to that. And then if you were subscribed in iTunes, it'd just pick it right back up. So that's all of like the pressing announcements. But that's why I'm doing the show live on Twitch here every Saturday night. I do try to post when I'm going live. I posted tonight on the Facebook page. I'm going to try to remember to post there every Saturday night as well, because for some reason that page has been picking up a lot of new followers, which is weird. Normally that page gets maybe one follow every 4 or 5 months. So somehow it picked up traction. I don't know if it got shared somewhere, or somebody just happened to notice it there. So yeah, if you want to check out the Facebook page, it is facebook.com/screampod. And you can follow the Facebook page over there. If you would like to follow Scream Stream on Twitter, it is twitter.com/scream_stream. So this week I am reviewing A Nightmare on Elm Street parts 1 and 2. And the reason why I'm doing this is because, well, I wanted to do a classic film. And I mean, it's the two horror films we ended up watching this week. So yeah, that's the films we've been watching, and plus they are now on Shudder. Shudder does not pay me. I'm not affiliated with Shudder. I just really like the service, and they added all of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. All of them, 6 of them. How many are there? Is it 7 or 8? I don't remember. But anyway, all six of the Nightmare on Elm Street films are now on Shudder. If you don't have Shudder, you can get a free trial just by going to shudder.com. That's SHUDDER.com, and sign up for a 7-day free trial. And you can watch all the films there. Highly recommend the service. It is one of my favorite streaming services. It is all horror all the time. They even have like a couple live channels. So they have like It Came From Shudder, which they show Shudder exclusives. I know they have like a couple of Shudder originals. And they're also doing podcasts too, and they have some really good high production podcasts. So definitely go and check that out. So as for the film, Nightmare on Elm Street was the first horror film I remember watching, like all the way through. One night, when was this come? I think this came out in 1984, right? When 84? I think it was 84. Hang on, let me look. I'm looking at the IMDb page. Pretty sure it was 84. Yeah, 1984. So we were living in Nebraska at the time, and pay-per-view had just come out. It was a big deal. I remember my parents rented the movie, and they made me go to bed because they wanted to watch this movie. And me being a child, a very curious child, I snuck downstairs and hid behind my dad's armchair. And I remember peeking around the chair and watching this movie. In '84, I was about 6. Yeah, I was about six or 7. And what got me over my fear of horror movies was this movie. I just kept thinking to myself, if this was real, the cameraman would be dead too. And so that's where I came. That's why I have the outro for the show is always end with, if it was real, the cameraman would be dead too. That's where I came up with this, watching this movie when I was a child, about 6 or 7 years old. So this is the first horror film that I watched all the way through. Actually remember watching it, and it terrified the mess out of me. Even though I knew it wasn't real, it was still pretty scary when you're a kid. So for the brief plot, this currently has a 7.5 on IMDb. For a brief plot synopsis, the monstrous spirit of a slain janitor seeks revenge by invading the dreams of teenagers whose parents were responsible for his untimely death. That is a huge spoiler. I wish I had read that before I actually read that out loud. That is a massive spoiler. Thank you for the donation. Terry, who just donated? Terry, because what? Oh my God, Terry. Terry, thank you for the donation, dude. I would not have seen it. I would not have seen it if my phone didn't vibrate in my pocket. Terry, thank you so much, man. How's it going, Terry? How are you doing? I appreciate that $20, man. Lord have mercy, dude. You are crazy pants, sir. Crazy pants. So yeah, I kind of wish that's a huge. Somebody should rewrite that because that's a spoiler. So this was written and directed by Wes Craven. This stars Heather Langenkamp, Johnny Depp, and Robert Englund. Those are the top 3 billed according to IMDb. But there's quite a few others. Let's see. Renee Blakely, Amanda Weiss, Jesus Garcia, Lynn Shay is in this. I completely forgot Lynn Shay was in this. I'm doing very well, Terry. Thank you. Oh, Lord. Terry. Thank you so much, man. And Mimi Craven really is in this? Huh. Did not know that. But yeah, Lynn Shay is the teacher in this movie, and Lynn Shay you would know from several recent horror films, including the Insidious series. She was in... What else? I think wasn't she in Annabelle too? I don't remember if she was in Annabelle or not. I know she's been in Insidious, and a shit ton of our recent horror films. So there you go. I'm not really going to go into acting too much. I'm not really going to review too much of the technical details, because I mean, this is a classic film. We can all agree this is a classic film. The acting is fine. The cinematography is great. What I do want to talk about is practical effects, because back in the 80s, man, this is what they had. They had practical effects. They didn't have CGI. Everything had to be done either in camera or post-processing with film using painted backdrops. They used a lot of that. They had to do a lot of film cutting. Really like intricate work back then. Now, I mean, you can slap shit into a computer and just edit it away, and wham bam, thank you ma'am, there you are, you have a movie with special effects, or visual effects. The practical effects in this film were really well done. I remember reading, there is one scene, the first time we see Freddy, where his arms are outstretched, like really long. I don't really know what the purpose of that was, but it still looked really cool. And what they did was they had 2 guys on each side of the road holding fishing poles, and the arms were held up with fishing string, and they were able to move it like that. And it still looked pretty cool. I mean, of course it was cheesy, but it still looked pretty cool. All the blood and guts looked really great.
Auto shutdown initiated.
Then you also have the scene where, oh man, I can't. Okay, let's see. How do I say this without spoilers? So in one scene, there's a blood fountain where blood, like this fountain of blood, shoots up from the middle of the bed, and the way they did that made it look pretty damn real. And I know that they had to rig a room that rotated upside down, I think, and shoot the blood out that way. And then they had to flip the camera upside down to make it look like it was still straight up and down. A lot of innovative work went into practical effects, and they looked really, really good. Do they hold up now? I think they do. I would much rather see a practical effect than digital effects, because I think a lot of times people overdo it, and then they overdo it so much that it looks fake. But with practical effects, man, they look really cool. I mean, of course, it also depends on the budget that you have. But I mean, this was New Line Cinema, Wes Craven. Of course, they had money to throw at the guy and just say, "Here, do what you got to do." I also like the story in the first one. The story was well written. Freddy wasn't in the movie a whole lot. He was only in there for a few scenes. But I think that created sort of this ominous feeling about Freddy. I think it really added a lot more tension to his character, and when is he going to pop up, and what's he going to do next. And because he's not there, you have that constant anticipation. Even like some of the tricks, like, Freddy is doing these things even though you can't see him, so he's always there in your mind, and you can just kind of imagine him doing these things. Makes him special, absolutely. Yes, Terry, it makes him special. And it adds what's the phrase I'm looking for? It adds weight to that character, to the dread that character brings. So I really like that a lot. And this is when, Robert Englund was really sort of trying to figure out what Freddy is. Because we know, if you've seen the rest of the films, the further we get into the sequels, the more of a caricature he becomes. And the nursery rhyme. Yeah. Thank you, Arcal. The nursery rhyme, I think it's a simple device, but it also sort of just adds to that effect that Freddy has on you, and constantly putting that in your mind. Like, man, I remember as a kid, after seeing the movie, man, I'd seen that shit all day long. And the kids in school were like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Have you seen this movie?" And I was like, "No, we're not allowed to watch the movie." I was like, "Well, I saw it." So. Yeah, and that little nursery rhyme, man, adds so much to the mythos. I really, really enjoyed this movie. I'm surprised it only has a 7.5. Kids always make it creepy. Kids are creepy, period. Kids are the creepiest people on earth. Like, that's why if you have a horror movie, throw a kid in there and instant classic. That's terrible. I shouldn't say that. It's kind of true. I mean, look at The Omen and Pet Sematary. Creepy kids, man. Creepy kids. Village of the Damned, creepy kids. So yeah, I really enjoyed the film. I think it deserves a higher than a 7.5. I would at least give this like an 8.7, maybe. Yeah, probably like an 8.7. I think that's where it goes. Yes, Terry. So yeah, I mean, I enjoyed this. I wish it had a higher rating on IMDb. The ending is the one thing that I didn't like, and that's kind of what is preventing me from giving it a 9. But it's a very small, minor issue that I have. Moving on to part two. Part two is Nightmare on Elm Street, part two, Freddy's Revenge. And this one came out in 1985, I believe, right? Yeah, 1985. So this one currently has a 5.5 on IMDb. Wow, that's harsh, man. For a brief plot synopsis, a teenage boy is haunted in his dreams by a deceased child murderer, Freddy Krueger, who's out to possess him in order to continue his reign of terror in the real world. This one was written by Jack Sholder. It was directed by Jack Sholder, written by David Chaskin and Wes Craven, who basically is based on his characters. I don't think he actually had anything to do with the script at all. This stars Robert Englund, Mark Patton, and Kim Myers. Now, there is a lot of controversy surrounding the subtext of the film, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But I do want to mention some of the acting and Robert Englund's portrayal of Freddy in this film in particular. Okay, so as I mentioned, this stars Mark Patton, Kim Myers, who actually did a lot of stuff that I didn't realize she did so much. Robert Russler, Clue Gallagher was Mr. Walsh, was Jesse's dad. Hope Lang, Marshall Bell, Melinda O'Fee. Why is Robert Englund so far down? I don't know why. That's weird. Okay. So this one's a little different. It came out a year later, or a year after Nightmare on Elm Street 1, but within the story, it takes place 5 years after the events of part 1, which is super weird to me. Like, because once they said in the movie, Jesse was talking to his girlfriend, Lisa. They had found a diary belonging to the main character in the first film, and it said, and it mentioned it was 5 years previous. And I kept thinking, how the hell does that work? Like, all the cars still look the same. They look about the same. How do you visually represent 5 years in the future without actually changing anything? It was weird. I didn't like that at all. I thought they should have rewritten that part. Also, you'll notice that in this movie, the door for the Freddy house is red. In the first film, it was blue, which I'd never really paid attention to it, because in all like the photos, if you ever look at photos of Nightmare on Elm Street or production photos or anything, you always see the red door. In the first film, it was blue, and then from part 2 on out, it was red. I couldn't find out why they made that decision, but it's interesting to note. So as far as the acting not quite as good as the first one, which might contribute to its lower rating. But I don't think the acting would drop it down that much. I mean, we're talking like a 5.5 here. That's not real good. I think so. I think Mark Patton did a pretty good job. He played his character a certain way. That Pinbot, how's it going, man? How you doing, Pinbot? That led to this whole idea that there's a homoerotic subtext to the film. I mean, I guess you could see that a little bit. But his acting was still really good. Kim Myers' acting was still pretty good. However, Robert Englund in this film, I guess he was still trying to come into the Freddy character. He did a lot of weird movements. There was one where he was chasing kids in a backyard, and he was running around just like flailing his arms like this. He looked like a goblin out of a fantasy movie more than a horror, like a slasher horror icon. I don't know what he was doing. I don't know what he was thinking. It was weird. It was weird. So I wish he had done something a little more serious with the character, like he did in the first film. I think he took it more of a it's called acting. I think he took more of a comedy sort of stance with some of the movements. I don't know, it was just so weird. It was goofy. I just didn't like his performance as Freddy in this one. It was strange. So as for the whole controversy around the film, many film critics have even rewritten the plot synopsis to say that Jesse Walsh is a young teenager coming to grips with his sexuality, which is not the case at all. So I guess what really contributes to this whole theory was Mark Patton is gay, and he did play. He was in a film before this where he did play another gay character, and the director said that too much of his personality came out in that character, and he even said, "Now look, this is David Chaskin, the director, said that Mark Patton played the character too gay, and that's why people assume that there was a subtext." And David Chaskin swears that there is no homoerotic subtext, that everybody just took it out of took it too seriously, and that Mark Patton played the character too gay. And then he later on apologized for his words, because Mark Patton said he said, "I played this character the way that I am and the way that I saw the character should be." But if you look at the plot, like the whole thing is him just trying to save his relationship with his girlfriend. So I guess I could see where film critics were confused, but I don't know, man. It's weird. It's one of those things that are still debatable. I think it could be. I think it could be, a story about a kid who's coming to grips with his sexuality and is not sure if he likes girls or boys. And during this whole thing, he kind of tries to figure that out. And I guess they relate to a scene where he saw the physical education coach in a gay bar, and implied that he was gay himself. Just a lot of stuff went into that whole theory, which I think there's some weight behind it, which makes for an interesting story. And afterwards, when you watch the film, you think about that subtext. You're like, that makes sense. That could be a thing. So homoerotic horror, yes, Pinmark. Yeah, this one is a really great study in character development, subtext in films. It's really interesting. The dynamic between him and his best friend also could imply that there is some subtext there. It's really, really cool. As like Echo Zulu, my psychology senses are tingling. Yeah, it's definitely worth watching again, and keeping all of that in mind while you're watching the film, and you start to see like, oh yeah, I kind of see that. I kind of see that, even though the director said that's not the case. That's not the case. But yeah, Mark Patton was really upset about what David Chaskin said. I mean, with good reason too. But yeah, there's a whole controversy about that thing, and it wasn't until many, many, many years later when David Chaskin finally apologized for that. Now the movie is gay. I mean, it kind of is. It kind of is, Terry. It's really interesting to watch, and I highly recommend that you go back and watch it. Is it a good movie? I think, I would give this, if I'm going out of 10, I'd give it at least a 6.5, man. At least a 1 star higher than 5.5. I think 5.5 is a little savage. It's harsh. I give it at least a 6.5. I'd knock it for some of the acting and Robert Englund's portrayal as Freddy in this. I think he was at this awkward sort of like this Freddy puberty stage where like he went from like serious Freddy, scary, menacing slasher to kind of comedic character with more of a dialogue, more of a story, and he just didn't really know what to do with it yet. And I think in part 3 he comes into that more and better. I said better. He comes into that character better. So I am going to be watching 3 probably tomorrow. But yeah, really interesting film, especially when you start to consider all the things that has been said about it. Can recommend. Again, they are all the first 6 films are available right now on Shudder. That's SHUDDER.com. Scary Terry is greater than Freddy Krueger. Well, there you go. If you don't have Shudder, I recommend getting the 7-day free trial. It is definitely worth it. I am not affiliated with Shudder. They do not sponsor me. They don't even know who I am. I just really, really, really love their service. I've been a subscriber since the day they launched, like 4 years ago. Has it been 4 years ago? It has been longer than that, I think. It's been about 5 or 6 years ago since they launched Shudder. Yeah, just a great service. Highly recommend. And I do recommend that you check out all of the Nightmare on Elm Street films, even if they aren't amazing movies. They're still definitely worth watching. I know Hybrid, regular in the chat. The only film he's seen with Freddy in it was Freddy vs. Jason, which is a bad example. That's a bad first time for Freddy. Can't recommend. Watch these movies. They are on Shudder, and that is my review of Nightmare on Elm Street Parts 1 and 2. That's going to do it for this week's episode of Scream Stream. If you'd like to keep up with me outside of the podcast, you can do so at twitter.com/scream_stream or on the Facebook fan page at facebook.com/screampod. If you'd like to hear all the podcast's past episodes, just go to screampod.com and that will take you to our YouTube channel where you will be able to listen to all those past episodes as well as a few you won't find anywhere else. If you have a movie you'd like me to review, hit me up on Facebook or Twitter. And Scream Stream is recorded live every Saturday night at twitch.tv/Jimbo Lewis. Until next week, I am Jimbo Lewis saying, if it was real, the cameraman would be dead too. Good night.